For the record, my name is Enrique Pepin, District 5 City Councilor, and I'm the Chair of Boston City Council Committee on City Services and Innovation Technology. Today's August 14th, 2025. The exact time is 10:03 a.m. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and Files Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.csit@boston.gov. It will be made a part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called on in the order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you are interested in testifying in person, please add your name to the sign-up sheet near the entrance of the chamber. If you're looking to testify virtually, please email our Central Staff Liaison, Shane Pack, at shane.pack@boston.gov. For the link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on docket number 1371, order for an expedited hearing on the city's July 4th payroll delay and its impact on affected employees. This matter was sponsored by Councilors Aaron Murphy, Ed Flynn, and John Fitzgerald, and was referred to the committee on July 9th, 2025. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues in order of arrival, Councilor Ed Flynn and Councilor Aaron Murphy. We are also joined by today's panelists, which is Scott Finn, City Auditor, Alex Lawrence, Chief People Officer, and Ashley Grafenberger, Chief Financial Officer. I'll start off with a quick opening remarks, and then I'll pass it over to the lead sponsors. So thank you to Councilor Murphy, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Fitzgerald for leading this docket and for including myself here as the chair. Thank you for the panelists for being here today. This is a very important topic. This is one that impacts our city employees. They're the front workers of our city. Want to make sure that we just get this right in the future, and that I know that this is something that we were able to resolve for some expeditedly. So thank you for what you did. But interested just to learn more of what we can do right moving forward. I'll pass it over to my colleagues for their statements.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for getting these important hearings that we filed scheduled. I'm happy that we're here to talk about it. So good morning. Thank you, everyone here, and I know many people are listening in. We're here today because thousands of Boston employees, people who dedicate their careers to serving the city, were expecting to wake up on July 4th with their paycheck already in the bank the day before. Instead, many woke up to empty balance. Rent was due, bills for many had already processed, holiday plans had been made, and for some families, this hurt twice as much because more than one family works for the city. And in one case, I was talking to a family who, mom and dad, but also it was their child's first time with a summer job and was also expecting their first paycheck and had fun weekend plans for the 4th of July. I understand that when July 4th falls on a Friday payday, it can cause conflict, especially when a federal holiday is on the every other Friday. But this is not new, and it's not unimaginable. In the past, when this exact situation occurred, the city paid employees on Thursday before the holiday, so no one had to go into a long weekend without their paycheck. That's the common sense approach, and it's the obligation the city has to its workers. This year, that didn't happen. Instead, many employees saw a pending deposit date of Monday, July 7th, 3 days after the holiday, because banks were closed on Friday and they never process on Saturday and Sunday. That left workers without access to their own money when they needed it most. Some banks were able to process deposits early, but others did not. I also understand that top city administrators spent much of Thursday on the phone with banks trying to free up funds, mainly for their own customers. To me, that's reactive, not proactive. And in many cases, it was almost probably impossible. I know I did speak with the treasurer that day that, knowing where everyone's checks get deposited also. So I know there was some big banks and they have the funds to be able to free it up, but some of our smaller credit unions that many of our city employees, depend on for their mortgages and their car payments weren't able to do that. And I'll be honest, this wasn't just a theoretical problem for me. I had a few bills set up to auto pay that Thursday, expecting my paycheck to be there. And because it wasn't, I got hit with 3 overdraft fees, $75 in charges, simply for paying my bills on time. If this happened to me, I can only imagine how many other thousands of workers were hit with fees. Many of us pay our bills online and set up our payments so we don't forget or get, any late fees sent. So I also got calls and texts from employees that morning. One story I just want to share was a family driving to the Cape for the 4th of July weekend, and they pulled over to fill up their gas tank, and the card was declined. So they checked their balance, and that's when they realized that their check wasn't there. And so we do talk a lot in this chamber, and I know during budget season and anytime you come before us with new contracts, we talk about, making sure that we're paying our workers a livable wage, that one job should be enough, but we know in the most expensive city to live in, even some of our top paid employees are living paycheck to paycheck. So it's not unimaginable that many people really do need to make sure in 1, 2, 3 days delay can cause havoc for themselves, especially on such what many people look forward to and maybe the only weekend they have to get away. So the result, overdraft fees, late rent notices, canceled holiday plans, and unnecessary stress for people who have already given up so much for the city. So to me, this isn't just about a missed payday, it's about the trust, reliability, and the dignity of work. So I hope we can focus on making sure if there is a way to make any employee whole for any financial harm they may have suffered, and just talking through and making sure, how do we make sure this never happens again? Because oftentimes, like the sidewalk hearing we had yesterday, it's often about setting reasonable expectations, making sure that our residents know what to expect, and that, the trust in city government. So thank you for being here. Looking forward to our conversation, and thank you, Chair.
Of course, thank you, Councillor. I'd like to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councillor Fitzgerald. Okay, Councillor Flynn, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to Councillor Murphy and to Councillor Fitzgerald as well for bringing this forward, and proud to partner with them. And I know all of my city council colleagues also received calls during this period of time and responded appropriately from their constituents as well, trying to help their constituents the best they could. That was a top priority. I had one call among many from a mother. Her son was going to college, and she needed to guarantee his seat as a freshman in college, and she was going to use that money to send the money to the college. She wasn't able to do it that day. She went to her mother, an elderly woman. She went to her mother and borrowed the money so she could get the money into the college on time. And then she told me she worked that weekend here in Boston as a dedicated city employee for the residents, providing exceptional basic city services. And that's why I'm here. That's why we're all here, is we want to make sure that our city employees, and I have a large number in my district. I know Enrique, you do too, and Aaron and John as well, and Ben. We have a lot of city employees, and they're our neighbors, they're our family members, they coach sports teams, they're active in the community civic groups, and we respect them. But it's unacceptable that City Hall made critical errors in processing the payroll for city employees on July 4th. As I mentioned, many dedicated city employees, including firefighters and others working over the July 4th long weekend, did not receive their pay. This error reflects poorly on our payroll, finance, human resources department, and the entire city of Boston, including the city council. I have also previously called on the city of Boston to cover late fees. In my opinion, it's an embarrassment, and it must never happen again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councillor Weber. Okay, Councillor Fitzgerald, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and happy to be here for this very important topic. Look, we know we can't change the past, right? I mean, it happened. Folks had to go through what they had to go through. And it was very unfortunate. I think my colleagues, I won't reiterate what they said, but I do echo their statements in that it put a lot of people in a bind. And these days, the binds are coming often. And so every single one we can avoid, we should be. I think what's important to hear and what I look forward to hearing is how this will never happen again, the steps we have taken in order to make sure that this doesn't happen. But and whatever reason this oversight did occur, that we have figured out why it occurred. But other than that, I feel for the folks that had that July 4th kind of taking that hit and having a not as an exciting weekend as they would have liked to have had, and that stinks for those families and those individuals. But right now, it's much more important to make sure we focus on the solution. So I look forward to that. Thank you all. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Weber?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I, as a workers' rights attorney, one of the biggest cases I worked on involved the late payment of wages to workers. I mean, that was a state that the state of Iowa had delayed months intentionally. But here, that's not the case. But, I think what's illustrated by that case and other cases is it's very important that we pay our workers on time, that, there's... here where we knew what was coming and beforehand. I'm just interested to hear what we did to plan and notify workers beforehand, and how we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again, as Councilor Fitzgerald said. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, I'll turn it over to the panelists for their opening statements and presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having us here. I'm Ashley Grofenberger, Chief Financial Officer. I'm joined by Alex Lawrence, our Chief People Officer, and Scott Finn, City Auditor. Thank you for having us here today to discuss the payroll incident that occurred around the July 4th holiday. Our hope today is to provide clarity around what happened, describe the steps we took to mitigate the impact in the moment, and share changes we've put in place to prevent this from happening in the future. First and foremost, of course, we would like to apologize to the employees who are impacted by this, and also thank the many city employees, many of whom were also experiencing issues with their pay, who sprung to action to address this issue ahead of the holiday weekend. Just a little bit about the process we go through to set these payroll dates. So every fall, Central Payroll, which is housed in auditing, and our Human Resources Department set the payroll calendar for the upcoming calendar year. This includes 52 pay periods, both weekly and biweekly, and paycheck dates. Once the payroll calendar is reviewed and approved by both teams, those dates are entered manually into our system. In this case, although the original payroll calendar accounted for the July 4th bank closure with a Thursday, July 3rd paycheck date, the entry into our system was erroneously made for Friday, July 4th. For the week of June 30th, Central Payroll conducted its usual payroll confirmation process and reconciliation process. Once that was complete, Central Payroll emails Treasury to notify that that process is finished and that checks are ready to be processed. Upon reviewing printed checks, Treasury staff discovered that the printed pay date was for July 4th. Treasury staff quickly called Citizens Bank to alert them of the error, and also called our liaison in the city's Department of Information Technology to see if there was anything we could do to systematically correct the error. Due to the vast variability of the hundreds of banks that are banking institutions that our employees use, we quickly pulled together a team to triage the issue as best we could. Specifically, we work with citizens to ensure that employees that receive paper paychecks had the option to cash their checks at any Citizens Bank branch prior to July 4th. We also sprung to action to contact as many banking partners as possible, escalating to the CEO, president, or senior-most regional manager to request that they make funds available as soon as possible. Many were able to accommodate the request, and funds were made available before the next business day. But despite the significant effort that went into correcting this, and due to the fact that there are hundreds of banking institutions that our employees use, many banks were not able to post funds until the following business day.
To further mitigate any adverse impacts, we contacted union partners and encouraged employees to contact Treasury if any employee had experienced overdraft fees as a result of the delay. We received 20 requests to waive overdraft fees, and we were able to work directly with banks to waive those fees in 18 of those instances on behalf of the employee. The 2 that we were not able to address, the banks were not able to work with us directly, and so we connected the employee with the bank and encouraged them to work together. We don't know the resolution of that. If there are additional instances beyond those 20, please, we would like to know about them so that we can work to make it right. Again, we sincerely apologize for the inconvenience and distress that this caused over the holiday weekend. Going forward, we've added additional checkpoints between auditing, Treasury, and Human Resources to identify issues early and prevent delays like this from ever happening again. Specifically, we now check the payroll calendar every Monday and Tuesday, and this has been added to Central Payroll's written processes. We're also exploring options within our system to upload a holiday calendar to our payroll system automatically, so we will never have to input these dates manually ever again. And we've also identified future instances in the next year and are carefully planning to ensure that we won't run into the same challenges. Specifically, we know that Juneteenth will fall on a Friday in 2026, so we are acutely aware of that, and we'll, be extra careful this year to ensure that we don't run into the same issue as we did on July 4th. So again, very sorry for the inconvenience and distress that this caused over the holiday weekend. We're available for your questions, and thanks again for having us.
Thank you. Any other opening statements? Okay. All right, I am going now to turn it over to the first round of questions, where we will start off with lead sponsors and then those based on order of arrival. Starting off with Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. Thank you for that. My questions have shifted a bit just because I have direct questions on your opening statement. So there is a printed out sheet, kind of like that, you can physically see the 52 weeks and the 26 weeks that are pay, and that one said Thursday, July 3rd, but somebody physically entered the 4th. Is that what we're saying?
Correct.
But doesn't and that was entered though in December? Like what month or day does that get entered?
It's usually done in November before the calendar year,
right.
yes.
So obviously human error can happen. We've had hearings in here about that, just human error causing, havoc sometimes or inconveniences. But does the physical entry of the dates get shown somewhere on a computer screen where someone then needs to check? And doesn't several departments, I know we talked about auditing, but Human Resources, Treasury Department, Payroll Department.
So in this instance, it was checked by one other person who did not identify the error. Okay. Since then, we've reviewed the procedures in my office as well as in Treasury, and we have added additional checkpoints throughout all processes. So we have a checklist every week on how we confirm payroll. There's been multiple steps added into that checklist where it could be hit off there, as well as more sign off from myself and the treasurer on any calendars.
Okay. And why were you mentioning Citizens Bank?
Thank you. Good question. So Citizens is our main banking partner, so they do all of our main banking. So we send the master payroll file to them, and then they distribute it out to the subrecipient banks.
All right. So Citizens can do a lot, and you said only 20 requests came in for what? So maybe a couple hundred, but they have $218.3 billion in assets. Members Plus Credit Union has $343 million. Many of these, like in my opening statement, these credit unions don't have the ability, especially they themselves on a Thursday before a bank long holiday, weren't maybe the person who could have made a decision. But I do want to address also that many of these smaller credit unions, financially can't take that on. So we put them in a position where it was almost like, and that's what I was hearing too, oh, well, this credit union was able to because this person got a call from Lou, or this one was able to, but this bank, wasn't willing to. It's not that they're not willing to, they financially couldn't. So to compare a small credit union, it's like comparing, the corner shop to Target or something, like, so what are we doing about the smaller banks who would have, of course, and they have a much more personal relationship with their members, and many are probably neighbors and they know them personally, and they weren't able to help them. So, like, were we reaching out to those banks saying that we as a city can help support or cover the costs? Like, were we trying to make sure that those deposits were clearing?
So what we did is we tried to cast as wide of a net as we could with the limited time and resources we had to address this. So we talked to some of the major banks in the area, like our Bank of Americas, our, the ones that we know a good chunk of our employees bank with, because we knew if we could make progress there, we could cover a lot of folks that have their direct deposits with those banks. So there were, we couldn't contact all of them. And I don't think it was necessarily an issue of us. Your point's well taken, right? Like being, some they don't have the assets.
Yeah.
Our ask to the banks when we called was if they could make the funds available prior to the following business day.
And how would they have been able to make the funds available? Like, because I was in
Yeah.
line actually, so some of my check goes to Members Plus. That's where my 3 individual late fee check, and more goes to City of Boston. I was in line seeing people trying to and didn't even realize it was the next day that I was like, oh, that's why people were trying to have checks clear or cash against a deposit, and it wasn't happening. So what was the ask to the individual banks when we called them?
Yeah, it was, again, if they could make sure that the funds were posted before July 7th.
But, I mean, the banks don't just have rules to hold your money. They usually have rules because they have their own systems in place. Like, wouldn't they have to override on a Thursday before the biggest, I'm just
Yeah, and it was
that.
kind of an extraordinary ask, and
Yeah.
so many were able to accommodate it, which was great. But again, either because we weren't able to talk to all of them or for other reasons. I mean, they were also, right before a holiday weekend, their staff, the timing, there was a lot of things that were coming together.
You mentioned unions, and then there was, I guess, some 20 city employees were told they could tell the city about fees and they got waived. Can you talk through that and why it was only certain, was it labor unions you're referring to?
Yep, so we did outreach and also encourage, a lot of folks were also calling the Treasury Department as well on the Thursday and then days after about this issue. We took down everyone's information, particularly if they had a late or an overdraft fee. And then we worked with their bank to see if that could be waived.
So I called the Treasury Department. I had 3 overdrafts. Nobody told me. And I was also advocating for residents who were telling me they had overdraft fees, and I was never told. Never mind for myself as a city employee. And I wasn't calling about myself. I was calling for residents. I mean, whatever, 70. I mean, it's not, I don't want to waste $75, but
Yeah.
I'm not here to say I want my money back, but I
Yeah.
am trying to say that I am someone who was hit with 3 overdraft fees, and I was never told when I was speaking to the Treasury Department that there is a process in place. And when we brought this to the floor as soon as we could, which was the Wednesday after, or no, it was because the holiday, no, it was the Wednesday after that, like, we were never told by the administration, like, oh, if you're getting calls, we are going to call on behalf and try to advocate that the bank waives these. I mean, 20 seems like a very low number. Like, what was your outreach, and why did those people get that benefit and not all city employees?
If there are additional instances that haven't made it to us, we want to know about
No,
them
but
so
I'm
we can
asking,
make it
like,
right.
how did we choose? Going forward, fine, thank you for saying that, but how did we choose which city employees got the benefit of having someone in their corner fighting for them and not all city employees?
we don't have visibility into everyone's individual bank accounts. And so we relied on folks to communicate to us that they had experienced an issue as a result of this payroll situation. And so if we intook that, whether it was directly from an employee or through union partners, cataloged that list, got folks' bank
Can you
information.
share that list with us? I mean, without, obviously, I don't want anyone's personal banking information, so we can see like what list was brought together and which city employees were advocated for?
I'll have to check. I mean,
Okay.
again, it's all personal information, so
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
want
that
to.
can be, yeah, I mean, it could be initials or like departments, like, I'm just trying to figure out, because you said that you got calls, because we were all, and I think everyone here who had an opening statement mentioned, and we've been talking, about this since it happened, but that we were also getting personal calls, like, what can I do? Are they gonna help me? Like, and I think, well, they haven't told us, we're looking forward to the hearing, but so it's just a little very discouraging that we're here at the hearing, a month later and finding out that there was an option, right, for us to advocate more for our residents, or for myself. I'll wait in a second round, thank you.
Of course. Councillor Flynn, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When did the administration first become aware that the July 4th holiday would coincide with a biweekly payday this year?
The calendar was developed and circulated in November of 2024.
Were there steps at that time to ensure that,
It was identified on that calendar that it was a holiday and that the pay date should be the 3rd.
and then were there any steps to ensure that the paychecks would be there on time, knowing that we do have an upcoming holiday?
So based on the calendar that we had developed for the whole calendar year, it was identified for that reason. The error came after the fact.
Okay. Who was the senior person in human resources or the treasury or auditing that was physically in the building on that day when the calls started coming in?
Myself, I was there, Scott was in the office, and so was Jerica Bradley, the treasurer.
And how did you first hear about this?
As I mentioned in my opening statement, when the Treasury Department printed the checks, that was when we first heard that there was going to be an issue.
Were you caught flat-footed?
What do you mean by that?
Do you feel you were prepared? Were you prepared to do your job to get those paychecks to city employees on time?
I think obviously there was a very condensed timeline and a lot of direct deposits that were in play here. I think the total payroll file was worth about $45 million for that week. And so I think with the resources we had and the time we had, we addressed it as best we could.
Did we notify the unions prior to the arrival of the paychecks that we have a major snafu here?
Yeah, so we, there was a ton of communication happening on that particular day. I unfortunately wasn't present in City Hall, but we were all working as much as we could. So yes, we were calling our union partners. We eventually ended up sending a citywide broadcast. I do want to acknowledge that I do think that probably came later than it should have. Anytime we're sending a broadcast to 19,000 employees, we are balancing accuracy, clarity of information, and timeliness. And I think if I were to know everything I knew today, I think that should have gone out earlier than it did. So I just want to acknowledge that. I think we were trying to balance the fact that it was, as Ashley has expressed and Scott has expressed, a really complicated moving target. And we find that when we do large-scale communications with this level of detailed information, that if it is not accurate, we cause much more confusion and panic. But I do think in retrospect, I really wish we had sent that earlier. We were just really trying to make sure we had accurate information and giving people all the possible steps they could take to remediate it.
I want to acknowledge Sam Dillon from the Boston Firefighters Union 718 for the work he did on that day fighting for city employees. Let me ask a question to all three of you. Do you think we were caught flat-footed because a lot of people are still working remote?
No. And I just want to, oh, sorry.
No?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Do all three of you work 5 days a week in office?
I do, yes.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, so since I said I wasn't here that day, I was on PTO that day. I did work the entire day because of this, but it was not because I was working remotely. We all work all the time in person.
You're all here full-time?
Yes.
Are people in your office, are they here full-time, 5 days a week?
In my office, no. The majority, I have 38 employees, 36 are covered by collective bargaining agreements where remote work has been.
Remote working?
Yeah.
How about you two?
So yeah, per our hybrid policy, there are people within our offices that are on approved hybrid schedules, which is up to 2 days of remote work. So for some of my employees, that's 1 day. Some of my employees, it's 2. There are some employees who are front desk employees, work that we think is important for them to be in person. So it's a case-by-case basis based on the individual nature of the job description.
My office, the CFO's office, we're all in 5 days a week, with the exception of 2 other employees who are on approved hybrid schedules. And I think similar to what Scott said, the Treasury team also has a number of union employees that are covered by those collective bargaining agreements, but the treasurer is here.
Do you feel like you let the residents, city employees down by actions or inactions by city officials?
So obviously we missed the mark in having this happen in the first
Right,
place,
right.
but I am, despite that, proud of what we were able to accomplish in a short period of time. I know we didn't get to everyone. I think we were able to do a lot in a short period of time. And again, the fact that it even happened is unfortunate, and I feel very confident that we will not see it happen again. But again, I think we did as much as we could with the time we had to address it.
Well, that's my major point. Certainly, it's an embarrassment to the city, and it must never happen again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Fitzgerald, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. In an instance like this, there's only so many probing questions you can ask, right? I mean, and I think my 2 previous councilors did a great job of asking those questions. I guess I would like to know, while echoing that we did let down the workers for the city of Boston for sure, and I believe that you guys feel that way too. Could you focus again on the solutions and just sort of repeat it, maybe go more in depth? I heard you talk about, Ms. Grabenberger, the solutions you put in place and the things that we're going to do, but if you could just describe those a little bit more so folks can understand now how this will not happen again.
Scott.
Let me take some.
Yeah.
Sure. So the first thing that we've implemented is more checkpoints during our confirmation process. So every Monday and Tuesday, we run certain processes to confirm payroll and confirm absence balances. Review of check dates is in that process at multiple points. We immediately printed out the payroll calendar for the rest of the year and made sure that all the dates were in line, and I signed off on that. When we talk about how we get the dates into the system, there's a very manual process after we do this massive review of the whole calendar year. And so there's additional checks in place for that as well as my sign off on that, just to ensure that at the end of this process, it's very manual, which
Is it still manual?
It is at the moment, but we are also exploring, I'm working with Human Resources and the DUA team to see if we can add in a calendar function that will gray out holidays so that we won't even have the option to save anything if we have a holiday chosen, which we believe is going to be available to us, which will help solve a lot. But until we get that in, we have a lot of checks and sign-offs in place to make sure it doesn't happen.
Okay.
And if I could just for a moment, I know it probably sounds strange to people who aren't sort of deep in the weeds of how our systems work to think that we have a manual process here. Just as someone who worked in DUIT for a large portion of my career, when you're an employer of our scale with like union agreements of our level of complexity, there's only so much, like it actually takes a massive team to create the sort of level of complex systems that are able to do the functions that our payroll requires. So like it's hard to understate how complex a payroll process of our scale is. And so it can sound really strange to people, oh, you have someone manually entering things, but that just has to do with the sort of level of complexity that our systems require. There is a ton of work we can do to make that more automated and not subject to human error, and that's why you see us continually coming to budget and requesting funds for these like projects that sound really far removed from the things people care about, but the work that our administrative teams do, like, are the work that ensures this stuff happens. And I just want to say one more time that, like, no person in payroll or human resources or who has dedicated their profession to this wants something like this to happen. They are coming in every day, not for the work that is, you know, like usually if we're on the front pages, like something has gone wrong, that is what happened in this circumstance. And like, obviously, you know, it's not just us who feel bad about it, but all the city workers who work every day to make sure these systems do function. And so, you know, we do want to highlight the fact that there are really large teams that work really hard to prevent things from like this happening, and it's obviously deeply regrettable that it did.
Great. I would like to, there were several banks that I think that did honor the payrolls, right? Do you know which ones those were? I know the Fire Credit Union was one of them. Do you guys know a list of any of others?
Just off the top of my head, Citizens, TD Bank, Bank of America was able to work with us. JP Morgan Chase was able to work with us. I think folks that banked with them were paid on Saturday. Those are just the ones off the top of my head, but there were many, many others. And I think one of the most interesting things going through this process was seeing how many banks that our employees bank with, hundreds of routing numbers that we needed to sort through and sort of match to different banks. It was really incredible, the scale.
Yeah. And just finally, back to the issue at hand. When you found out on the Monday when the checks are printed, when the checks were printed that said the July 4th date, what day was that?
I don't know what day it was exactly.
But was it that week or was it like
it was that week?
It was that
yeah,
week.
It was that
right.
week, yes.
But I imagine at that point, once it's printed, knowing the complex process it has to go through, that you guys probably went, oh, shoot. Right? Like, I would feel that you'd say, like, you pretty much knew at that point, you were past the point of no return.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think Ashley described that we tried to see what we could do to reverse it at that point, and it just was too late at that point.
And I think we did explore if there was an option to sort of like pull it back and reissue it. And I think the concern was that we would have created many more problems, instances where folks would have been double paid or not paid, you know, so the risks were too significant and unknown for us to decide to proceed that way.
I don't know if anyone being double paid would consider that a risk, but that's a risk I would always take. But you know, I do appreciate your efforts. Very obviously upset knowing if I missed a paycheck, how quickly things go downhill with mortgage, kids, payments, everything. It really does have an effect. So thank you for your time and explaining it. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Weber.
Hi, thanks. So I get so when the paychecks get printed and you see that, I guess Ashley, was your understanding that people are going to be paid on July 3rd before that, from November 2024 to that time? I just wasn't
Yes,
sure.
correct. So our understanding of the payroll calendar as it was set was that it was going to be July 3rd, but it wasn't until we noticed on the printed check that the system and the calendar were out of whack.
Okay. And I guess, so is part of the problem, I mean, if everyone was getting paid direct deposit, would that have?
Unfortunately, no, because the check date was on July 4th, and that was the issue. So some banks were able and, you know, had a policy of posting those funds early, and others wouldn't post until the following business day. Okay.
And I guess, so, I guess how much is this biweekly, the payroll, like the total city payroll?
So in this instance, the payroll for that particular week was, I think, $45 million.
Okay. And do you know, like, what percentage of that, like, got paid out on time or?
So based on kind of some rough back of the napkin, again, this was like an exercise of me on Friday and Saturday morning, pivoting routing numbers and trying to figure out what I knew certain banks had been paid. I think by Saturday, we thought that about 75% of folks had received pay, but again, hundreds of banking institutions, and this was a kind of rough back of the napkin.
And were you calling banks? Like, how many
Yes.
people are on this task?
So we were calling banks all day on Thursday to ask them to process this. They would go off to their teams, call us back. We were working with many, and again, really focusing on banks we had relationships with, new senior folks, and then some of the larger institutions to try and be as efficient as possible. And so yes, we were working with all of their teams.
How many people did you have making these calls?
There was a small team of us. Again, it was myself, the mayor's chief of staff was assisting as well. Our treasurer was helping. But I just also, the one thing I didn't fully appreciate on the day was that in addition to this payroll incident happening, that particular week is one of our biggest weeks for regular payment. So it's the first warrant of the fiscal year. So we're making our pension payment. We're making our OPEB payment. So in addition to this, we were making payments and balancing over $1 billion of payments that weekend. So there was a lot going on in the Treasury Department on that day.
Okay. And then I guess, so I have an email, it's like from Thursday, July 3rd at like 2:09
Yes.
to people. And Alex, did you say you wish that you had gotten that out earlier? I mean, how early could it have gotten out?
I think it would have probably depended on the quality of information we wanted to provide people. And so that's what I was saying is like every time we think about sending a citywide broadcast, we have to sort of balance the amount of completeness and accuracy with the amount with timeliness. And so, I think we could have said, hey folks, something is wrong. Some of you might get paid. Some of you, we could have probably given a version of that email that would have calmed some people down, also created a bunch of hysteria and not provided a lot of clarity. Maybe that's what we should have done earlier. But I think ultimately when you're emailing a group that is that large, you really, in our experience, want to make sure you have completeness of information. So it's a balancing act. Again, I'm in no way saying that we hit the perfect scale of that balance, but it was a deliberate process with many people trying to think about what is the right amount of information we can give people that it's actionable for them.
Okay, but the earliest that you could have sent something out is after the paychecks were printed, and that was that Monday?
I don't know exactly what day it was. It was,
Yeah, we could have maybe sent it a day earlier, but again,
earlier.
it wouldn't have been complete information about what the steps they could take were to mediate the problem.
Payroll was not confirmed until late on Monday, so the whole process about notifying Treasury and Treasury starting their processes wasn't until at least Tuesday morning, but I don't even think it was at that point. But it definitely was not Monday.
Okay. Let's see. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Weber. I agree. A lot of my colleagues have already asked a lot of the questions that I think are pertinent for this conversation, and to know that there are steps in place to prevent this from happening in the future. I have more of a curiosity question, and I'm talking with different colleagues in the city. How is it determined that if based on your bank, you get paid on different days? I just want to know, how is that played out? Is that based on how the bank works or the relationship with the bank and the city? Can you explain that?
I think that's entirely based on the individual bank.
Okay.
So I think like TD, for example, and I just know, I don't bank with TD personally, but I know this from their television commercials. They have a program where direct deposits show up 2 days early, right? So I think it's entirely dependent on the individual bank you use.
That makes sense. Yeah, I have Santander, and very much I'm one of the last ones to get paid usually, or the day of. So looks like I have to get a new bank. But I'm just thankful for the fact that my colleagues really did ask all the questions that I had. I am going to give opportunity for a second round of questions just in case there's any follow-ups.
Thank you.
I know there is. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. So I do just want to go back to that point, because I did talk to a few of the smaller credit unions, and they did feel as though members were calling them saying, well, this bank did it, why can't you? And then you mentioned JP Morgan. They have $4 trillion in assets, right? So yeah, I mean, they could have paid out $43 million and not even notice it was missing for a few years. So I do just want to make sure that our banks that obviously care about their members, that it almost seems like we made a mistake here in the city and then we made it the problem of these local banks who have very good relationships and want their members to stay, right? I mean, I don't know if he meant it, but we don't want you, right? But members don't want to say, I'm taking my money and I'm changing because I didn't, get paid once, and that happens, right? You lose customers from one bad experience. So it's very easy for JP Morgan to float to them. 43 million is nothing. So are you saying that the checks, when the physical checks were printed, there was a human person in the Treasury Department who noticed it? And what day was that? Thursday?
No, again, I don't know which day the Treasury Department printed the checks, but I do know that there was a process they went through after to communicate with Citizens Bank to see if there was anything that can be done to address it.
Could it have been as early as Tuesday?
It could have been.
But don't we know, July 3rd was 42 days ago, and we know this hearing was filed 37 days ago, so, the city knew. You would want to know anyway, I would think, but the city knew that this, city council was going to be holding a hearing to get these answers right. So it could have been as early as Tuesday that the city of Boston knew that there could be a problem coming up on the long weekend, and we're not going to say anything till Thursday afternoon?
Yeah, I think in this instance, it was really about trying to properly understand the scale and scope of the problem.
Try to fix it before. I can appreciate a little bit of that, right? But I'm thinking like teenagers, right? Oh, mom's coming home. Let's try to get in as little trouble as we can here. Let's fix some of it. But shouldn't we always, or at least be notifying the city council, there's a problem and this could be a really big problem? Because even though 75% got paid on time, not that I'd ever want to see, but that means 14,250 city employees didn't, right? So no, sorry, that's wrong. That's how many did get paid on time. But there's still thousands of 4,000, more than 4,000 city employees didn't get paid, and we knew on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday we definitely knew, and then on Thursday, and when the letter went out, I know that Councilor Weber just referenced, I think he even has it printed out in front of him, did it explain then that please let us know if your check doesn't get deposited, please reach out to this city department, here's the email, and please let us know that if there are fees or any financial burden placed on you because of our error, we will make sure we make you whole? Was that part of the letter that we sent out to city employees?
So that specifically was not part of the letter. We did include information telling employees to contact either their HR department or to submit a ticket through our Beacon portal. And like Chief Lawrence was saying, could we have notified folks on Wednesday? Yes, and I think
Wednesday, that early?
But we probably would have
How many
had
tickets?
very little information to give you at that point.
Well, you would have the information that, we're all adults here. I think that's dumbing down our city force, assuming that they can't make their own decisions. Hey, just giving you a heads up, this may happen. So if you need to call your mom today because your daughter's deposit, like Councilor Flynn's story, or you need to make sure that you fill your gas tank now before you drive to the Cape and realize you can't check into the hotel, because that was another story I heard, their funds weren't going to be available. There was a family who was on a hockey tournament, and she's like, I've got to figure out who can Venmo me money. I can't check out of the hotel. It was, but we could have warned people, even though it may not have happened to 75% of you, and at that point, we didn't know how many, but.
Right.
So how many tickets were entered?
Very few.
Right, because do we think, though, that's because it wasn't made clear to our city force that this is something, did we follow up saying, hey, it seems as though a very, very, like, only 20, you said? Yeah.
We received 20 requests for waiver of overdraft fees.
And are we going to send out another communication saying, like, so people understand? Because since then, maybe they never went back and read, like, now that and at that point, you didn't know. I mean, I didn't get the letters in the mail, and you never like a thin envelope from your bank, and then I got two, and then when I got the third one, I'm like, I think it's the same one thing. They kept trying to pay this one bill, which was $47 bill, and I got a $75 in fees, right? It happened to a lot of people. Are we going to let city employees know? Like, we told you then, you may not have noticed, but here is, put in a ticket, and we can try, like, if you have proof with your bank statement that there were fees from that weekend of not getting paid.
Yeah, certainly if there are any employees who have received overdraft fees, they should put in a ticket, and we will work with them to waive them.
Okay. You mentioned, and I totally can appreciate that it was the back of the napkin the day of and scrambling through the Friday into Saturday because there was a chance that maybe some would get it Saturday. But now, like I mentioned, 42 days later, are we going to get a full report of exactly how many, like, to get the actual data? Because like you're saying that it's still kind of the day of, this is what you know, the best you could do with the numbers. Are we going to get a real accurate number now that we're, you know, a few paychecks out since then?
Probably not, because that's going to be dependent on individual banks and accounts, right? And like I said, hundreds of banking institutions. We don't have as a city visibility into what happens to that payroll file after it goes to Citizens and Citizens sends it out to the subrecipient banks. So all I was doing on the Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, that's all you could do then, but now that we can look back, are we going to ask employees through whatever system is the most, you know, effective way to communicate, please let us know if you didn't, because that wouldn't, do you want that information? Or do you want to just move? I'm just at, like, what, the roles that you play, do you want to find out, like, what was the actual impact of it? We already know what happened, but do you want to have real data knowing, like, when we made this error, it happened, like, we're gonna move on, we have to, we did, right? But what impact did it really have? Instead of just kind of generally assuming, like, maybe 75%. And many employees have their check deposited into several different accounts.
Right.
So one employee could have 2, 3, 4 different banks that, you know, auto pay and others. So, but are we going to try to get a real answer on that so that we have that? And it would have to take communication with employees to want to share if that happened to them.
Yeah, and it was such a rolling target over the weekend, right? Some folks were getting it on Friday, some people were getting it on Saturday, so it was kind of changing and evolving over the weekend. I think what was most important to us to know was that everyone was paid by the Monday, right? The next business day. So kind of when that impact hit someone or when it didn't, I think we were most focused on understanding that everyone was paid by Monday.
100% agree, but the Monday after the long weekend, and we knew everyone at that point got paid, was many weeks ago. So I'm not talking about while we were in that weekend and we were trying to figure it out. I'm saying now that we are this many days out, 42 days out from that, and we're not scrambling and doing our best and sacrificing our weekend, where all of the things you've already described that, you know, top administrators were doing, like, so we're weeks away. I'm saying, like, now that we're in August.
Sure, and I just want to say, like you said, our employees they communicate with us all day, every day. They are really aware of the systems that they have in place. So to get in touch with us, we get thousands of tickets every day. So certainly all employees can put in a ticket or do all of the many ways they typically get in touch with us to let us know that they have overdraft fees, and we'll work to waive them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and maybe to follow up on Councilor Murphy's questions, was there an after-action report done about the situation, what exactly happened, why it happened, and steps going forward to prevent that? Is there a written document on that?
Not a, maybe there's something in Treasury or auditing, not a formal written document as you described. I think in preparation for this hearing, it was helpful for us to sort of lay out exactly what happened and then what we're doing going forward. So we do have, written documentation of that now.
So as a city councilor, I'm requesting that the city officials produce a written document about exactly what happened, why it happened, how we move forward, including comments from here, but a written document to kind of capture this entire incident. Is that a reasonable request that I'm making?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you would commit to doing that?
Sure, yes, we can submit a report.
When do you think that would take place?
We can talk to our teams and, shouldn't be too
Okay.
time consuming.
Then my other point, and obviously I'm not singling out Councilor Weber, but as a labor lawyer, so if this incident happened in the private sector, would there be some type of investigation from any appropriate investigative agency, such as such as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, such as the federal government? I'm saying, I guess my point is, did Boston do anything legally wrong in this issue?
I'm not an attorney, so I can't comment on that.
Does anybody have a comment on that? So if a private sector company did the same exact thing in Boston, would there be an investigation from state officials?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think any of us are the right people to answer that question.
No, I'm not sure.
Okay. I just don't know if what happened here is potentially a violation of the law. I know it's a mistake, but does that mean it's also a violation of the law, not to pay your employees on time? Could that question also be part of the written response, and maybe we can do a little bit of research on, is it appropriate for someone to do an outside investigation on this? Is that something you would welcome?
I don't think any of us are really in a good position to comment on legal issues like that, so we can certainly take the question, but not able to comment.
But I don't think there's any ambiguity about what happened here in terms of investigation. I think we're very clear on the procedures that went wrong and the steps we need to take to mitigate them.
Right. We know what went wrong, and it wasn't intentional, but does that also make it potentially any type of violation of state law?
I don't
No,
think any
the
of
answer is
us.
no.
I don't think any of us
I don't know.
should be commenting on that.
Who would be able to answer that question?
I don't know. My guess is someone from the law department, but
Is that a question you could forward to the law department on behalf of the city council?
yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Fitz or Weber, any follow-up?
Just one.
Okay.
Just a clarifying question on something earlier about the communication that went out to all people, because I don't believe I received anything either. But so I want to make sure I understand that no communication went out to all city employees that
Yes.
offered next step. A communication went out to all city employees that said this is what to do if you are not paid. Here are the steps to take.
What the communication specifically said is that should you have any questions to put in a Beacon ticket or call your HR representative with the phone number that was included there.
Gotcha. And we would have got that too. Was that delivered? That was all by email?
It was by email. Every city employee should have received that. I can specifically look into why you may not have
No.
received that
I'm not
email.
saying I didn't. It very well could have. I don't remember. Right. That's why I just want to make sure. I will double check my own email and reread what it said, and I will let you know if I did not get it for whatever reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Weber?
No, I mean, I guess just to Counselor Flynn's point, I mean, and I think it just illustrates the seriousness of this discussion is, you know, there could be legal issues, you know, and you know, certainly it's a possibility. So, you know, I think in terms of making sure that we pay people on time is very important. And, you know, I hope that that we will make sure that nothing like this happens again, that people get paid, you know, when they're supposed to, because that's what the laws are there to ensure that people get their wages on time. So, thanks.
All right, I'm going to give the panel an opportunity to give closing remarks.
I don't think we have anything prepared. Thanks again for giving us the opportunity to come in and talk about this. Appreciate it very much. And I think I'll just speak on behalf of my co-panelists here. Obviously, deeply regrettable, and would just like to apologize to the city employees that this impacted.
Thank you. Good. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for today's answers and today's discussion. This hearing on docket number 1371 is adjourned.
Thank you.